Okay.
Came in?
Yes, we're live. Welcome to Edge of Truth Radio. This is how to get clarity in current chaos. We're here talking about paradigms, how they inform your thinking, and everything else you do.
Yeah, they're big.
Your hosts today are Sharon Quinn and Will Gable. My name is Tryson Graham. I've worked tirelessly on the tech for the last 2 hours. Excuse us for our tardiness, and know that we are a low-budget channel at the moment, so we're counting on you for support. You can go to akrna.com/contact us.
I think it's contact-us.
Contact-us, or just click contact us in the akrna.com website, and there you can find out all of our programs, resources that Sharon has available, and you can drop a line, leave a message, let us know what you'd like, what you want to talk about, what you liked about the show. You can also check out the blog talk that's on the AKRNA website, but those are archived shows, and the new shows will be streaming on these platforms. Right now we're live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, and looking to go out to the whole worldwide, all across the globe.
That's right. Our show has been reaching people even as far as France from comments we've been getting, so we're going to keep hanging in there for you guys.
yeah, that's right. Sharon Quinn is an author, a teacher, a speaker, and I have a few of her books now available on Amazon. The Big If in Life, Tango with the Divine, and Preface to Your Eternity. Huge discussions of paradigms and shifts in consciousness, awareness, thinking, but it all starts with getting clarity, paradigms, and coming back to the bottom line thinking. Mm-hmm. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sharon and enjoy your discussion.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Tryson, for making this possible. We've got to give Tryson a big hand, because if we didn't have his technical assistance, it would only be happening here in Oklahoma City to a small handful of people. And while they're very important, everyone's important. And the reason we feel such an urgency to get this show going before we're 100% ready to do it the way we want, exactly as we want, what some people might call a well-financed situation. We're well-financed in the wealth that is internal, that allows us to understand wealth in our external world from a whole different perspective, so that we can have it and hold on to it and live by it, rather than be a slave to it or be in total fear about what's going on. So, in thinking this over, we did a lot of brainstorming, and we thought probably the very best place to start to understand what's exploding in front of us everywhere. I mean, in the last 30 to 90 days, we have been experiencing a breakdown and a chaos that I don't think anybody saw coming. So, but we have to deal with it. It's in our face, and it's impacting our lives, and it's having a very, very negative impact in many, many ways. In a positive way, it's allowing us to look and say, what is wrong with our world? What is wrong with what we thought we had worked out and was really a good thing for us? Okay, because we were kind of cavalierly running along, driving and tooling along on the road of life in our little convertibles and having a good time. Then suddenly the rug gets pulled out, and almost overnight we are finding ourselves isolated and in our homes and getting fearful messages about how death is around the next corner. Death, 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 death. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. And it didn't take long for all of us to just kind of slam on the brakes and just contract. Okay, we responded to the fear. We all know that happened. And we all know we're still dealing with it somehow, some way. But we don't understand how to stop it. We don't understand what our next steps are. And we don't really, for the most part, really understand what the hell's going on and what really is happening. Okay? After about 30 days or so, we were all able to start having a different perspective other than just the immediate media throwing stuff at us about this pandemic. Okay? A pandemic is supposed to really mean the type of exposure to a problem that is, let's say, of the bacteria or virus nature, that is dropping people dead in the streets in such large numbers that we would all know many, many, many people who have died. Period. Not just who got sick, but who actually are dead. I know that sounds harsh, but it's fact, and we all know it. So let's just say it and get it on the table and be smart about it. Let's be honest, okay? So, this whole thing happens, and we're looking around, and months have passed, and we may know a few people, but we don't know hundreds of people who have died. None of us do. I haven't talked to anybody. Most of the people I talk to, surprisingly, know nobody. All right, that does not fit the type of recognition and life experience that would validate the idea of a true pandemic. Who told us about the pandemic? How we normally know a pandemic is occurring is because we're seeing evidence of it. So many people are dying, and they're not recovering from whatever they're getting sick from. When cholera hit, when the bubonic plague hit, nobody needed the news to be telling everybody, hey, we've got a pandemic. People knew it. Their communities were seeing massive amounts of people dying. Okay? That was life experience telling people we have a serious problem. And if you'll notice, we survived all of them as a world, as a society, as people. We have better understandings now of what causes what. You know, just at the time of Queen Victoria, a big one occurred, and they were wondering, I think it was cholera, but I might have the name of it wrong. And it turns out that with a little bit of research, they finally figured out that where all of this was occurring was from water, and a particular well in a district of the city. And that's where everybody was dying. So what they did is they realized it had an epicenter. And what they did is they went to the epicenter and started looking at what was going on. And just because I think this is amazing, is they noticed that the men weren't getting it, but the women and the children were. So who were the vulnerable people? And that one was women and children. Well, why were the men not getting it? Well, they began to realize that in that same area, that epicenter, there was a brewery, a beer factory, okay? And the men were primarily drinking the beer. And it was the women and the children who were going to the well and drinking the water. And it turns out it was the water. So they shut the well down, and they wouldn't let anybody access the well. And guess what? That pandemic disappeared. There were still some deaths, but then they began to realize it had something to do with the water, throw the water away, and they resolved the problem. I don't know how much longer it took before we got the why behind what was in that water that caused the problem and why water could cause a problem. But it got figured out, and it turns out I think it was a bacteria. Okay. So, pandemics are nothing really new, per se. But what's different today that wasn't going on in all of our history? Well, we have papers and newspapers, and we have information being able to spread like that. And we have an ability to get everybody and his dog talking about information, whether or not they have any information. You know, it's the idea that I can go and type in something to Google, do a couple researches, get some very unverified information, and then all of a sudden I'm an expert about something. This added to misinformation outflow very, very rapidly. Now, we've all known, we've been complaining about it before everything got out of control, that the press was really into sensationalism. That's the word. Into hyper-sensationalism. And they were becoming brazen about being more concerned about big sensations than facts. And so we saw this breakdown of our newspapers and press and the media. That plays a part in what we're looking at today. Okay, we can just put a period there. We all know that. We don't need any proof or anything else. We already know that. Okay, so we can just take that and say, that's an important thing for us to remember, and let's just put that piece over here and let it sit there for a minute, because it'll be playing a part and weaving in and out of what we're going to try to understand today, start an understanding of today. All of this really takes us back to our society, doesn't it? And how do we live, and how do we relate to each other? And when something big is happening to our whole society, what is supporting us as a society? What breaks us down as a society? What defines us as a society? Whether it's our local society, our state society, our country society, a nation society, a global society. Okay? That's a question people aren't asking, and yet it is one of the most normalizing, bringing sanity to what's going on right now, questions for us to ask. So our world and all of our societies, we function from what's called paradigms. And a paradigm essentially is an idea or a thought that defines our values and the way we're going to function. And in time, our paradigms, they pick up their own momentum and they become more and more solidified. They start out rather broad, and then they get more and more locked in. And they start forming for our society. We start establishing institutions to support our society's growth, particularly when it's as big and as technological as ours. We have a lot of institutions. So we have paradigms that are our social guidelines, and they establish our institutions to support our social guidelines so that we have ways in which to keep it all going. So before the show, we were doing some brainstorming, and we started with the idea of, let's name some of those major institutions so everybody can relate to it. So we started with one that we're all very much aware of, is religion. And that's an institution that helps us look at our spiritual life, that helps us define our moral compass. Let's just keep it that simple, right? What's another one? Another really big institution, of course, is always going to be, are we ready for this one? Government! And what does our government do for us? Well, it allows us to have law and order, right? What else does a government do for us? It allows us to govern how we are going to have rights or not have rights. So a really, really big part of our government for the whole United States is we had established a constitution. That's what got the United States of America up and rolling. And they wanted to shift when the Constitution was set up. People came over from England and said, we want to leave the paradigms that were governing England because they were oppressive to a lot of people. And they found it was stopping certain creativity, and they were willing to take the huge risk of getting in boats, going out into an unknown land, and to try to establish from nothing, walking off these boats, used to nice homes and everything else, and looking and saying, wow, living in tents, trying to build one big building for everybody to live in, then slowly build another house, and then another house, and slowly started building communities. And then they realized they had some new paradigms that needed to be clarified to allow them to govern themselves as it got bigger. We all understand that, right? That's easy to get. What's another institution that is very important for an organized society? Okay? Another one would be, we establish what? Education. Right? Education. I'm trying to do this so that you can read my handwriting. All right. Education. Well, that's a big one, isn't it? because that's how we decide to set up how we're going to train our children from and the things that they need to know to live in this big society that we have that requires people to read, write, math, have a moral compass. Okay, we want that moral compass, and we want character development. We want people to know how to have critical thinking, and on and on and on, right?
Healthy life skills.
Oh, healthy life skills. And so what do a lot of people, if we put that into one big category, what would most people consider that? Medical. A lot of people, that's what our current paradigm is calling it. A medical, okay? So we have a medical institution. And we know that that's really true because we have big, huge insurance policies to make sure we can get our medical needs met. We have a whole public education system that has become a big deal to make sure we have education, which we're not all real happy with, right? I've been hearing for over 30 years now the dumbing down of America. We keep trying to fix this. And this little broken machine here isn't getting any better because we're still dissatisfied. If it were really getting better, we would be very happy with the system. It would be meeting our needs, but it's not. Yes, Will?
Just wanted to add here, one of the things here we're probably going to get into down the road here with, and referring out of some of Sharon's books, was one of her, I guess, definitions of a lot of situations, particularly the spiritual or religion, this whole thing of paradigm paralysis. And this is where a lot of these institutions have become calcified, and they haven't really moved on. We haven't really, we'll just say, evolved them or changed them. And if you look at it, a lot of it, say like the people that she mentioned came over from England, well, religion was part of their wanting to get away from that oppression, to come here to establish their own perspectives. So they were actually, that was that was out of a paradigm paralysis, trying to come into a new world expression.
And what's interesting about a paradigm, it's also the way we will process information. So you want to keep that important. It's a social guideline, and I'm going to stand up for a second here so I can write this down because I'm left-handed. It's also how we will process information. Okay? And we will process it by the rules and guidelines that we have set up that are governing us. And where are we going to learn about processing information? We're going to largely hear about that in education. Okay? That's a very big deal. And we want to rely on an education that prepares us for the society we live in. Now remember, the paradigms are governing us, and there are guidelines in the way we process information. We depend upon them. This is very important, but we don't think about them. We can't see them, right? But they're there, and they're governing us. Is there, right now, there's many different institutions we have set up. Can you think of another one that's really important for us?
Political.
Okay, we have government and political. It's not quite government, is it? So, let's make a little consensus here. Should we make that another institution or a subset of government? Oh.
It's a subset of a lot of things.
All right, so if it's a subset of many things, then it's its own kind of institution. So we'll give it its own little thing here. So we're going to say political. Political. Okay, I'm begging your forgiveness. Political is what that word is. Oh, all right. So now we have political. Okay. Now we will see that there are others, but let's work with these because they're the biggies. Unless somebody's got another biggie that they think needs to be on there, you write it up. We're watching all the chats. So you're part of this conversation. You're part of what we're going to be talking about here today. Okay, so let's go on. Since I think that's a good set, it gives us the idea of what we want to understand about the idea of how important paradigms and how they relate to you and I. Now, one thing that will be very helpful is for anybody who wants to go and get this book, Tango with the Divine. There is a whole section on part 2 of the book that starts on page 51 called Paradigms Made Clear. gives a very easy to understand idea about something that's really, really, really big, okay? And then it will explain to you all the way down to page 86 different aspects of how to look at a paradigm. It's broken down so you can put it together like a nice little puzzle and say, aha, they are important. And you can decide for yourself that you need to decide for yourself, because one of the things about the current paradigm is it got largely built upon a few things that are hurting us right now. One of them was the religions gave us the idea of blind faith. Now, is this a good thing for our society or a negative thing?
Negative.
Negative, okay? Why would you say it was negative, Will?
Well, to me, it just leaves a person in the condition of what we're talking about here, which is paradigm paralysis.
Right.
You go blind faith, so from that point on, you don't consider anything. Nothing can leak into your consciousness or awareness.
That's right. Did you want to weigh in anything on that, Tryson?
Or even force its way into your consciousness, because you're too invested to defend the paradigm, and certain paradigms limit your thought to only within that paradigm.
All right.
So it's illegal to entertain ideas outside of that.
So, fear of change. Stay in your box. Right?
Yeah.
Stay in your box. That's a B. Whether it's a religious idea, a government idea, an education idea, or a medical idea. So a big part of the current paradigm we're living under is fear of change, stay in your box, blind faith. Blind faith says you are not allowed to think for yourself. You are supposed to, if you can't get an answer, trust. Trust you can't know. So what's implied in that particular paradigm, and all these paradigms actually build upon it, what is it? You are not smart enough to know. We're going to write that down. You aren't smart enough to know.
Well, you don't have enough intelligence to have a critical thinking skill.
All right, so here, this is, we're going to use the word intelligence. So there's an in this particular paradigm is we have puny intelligence. Okay, unless you're somebody special. But we'll get into that later. But right now, we want to look at just the bottom lines. Okay? Because you need to understand which one of these and how many of them are influencing you right now. And how they have influenced what happened over the last 90 days. Because we want to understand that. We need to understand it. It is our right to understand it, and we must understand it. Or we're going to continue to go down a path with blind faith, tooling us wherever fear is taking us. Because right now, I don't think we have to have a big discussion about it. Fear is leading us. I'd like to say, and I've been saying it to every leader I talk to, stop following fear and start leading us back into prosperity. Get facts, not projections. And a lot of the leaders look at me like, what does that mean? And I'm thinking, and you're in an office of position to be leading? You don't know what that means? All right, let's talk about it. But I just had to express my shock that didn't make sense to you the minute you heard it, okay? In essence, it's basically saying you have to be, if you're going to lead, you have to be thinking outside of what the media is throwing around. You have to think back at the root, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. So I think I'm jumping ahead. So let me go back. I don't want to jump ahead. I want you to really get this. Now, also in Tango, when you look at paradigms made clear, they're defined. And here's something very interesting. Phase 1 about paradigms. A paradigm change alert. We are living in a paradigm change alert. And how do we know it's an alert? Well, one, we see red flags everywhere. We see everything that we have built, all our institutions around, falling apart, and they're falling apart all at once. Oh my God. We have to look at this. We have to understand it. And it's up to people like you, which means everybody who's breathing their breath, needs to be thinking again. And what we're doing here is helping you know how to think in a way that is no longer chaotic, but organized and at the bottom line. Then we also talk in the book, it says the Band-Aid syndrome. Well, we've been living there for a long time, and we're right now doing a lot of Band-Aid throwing. Masks are a Band-Aid to the COVID thing. Distancing. Oh, everybody's jumping on that to make their fear feel better. Okay, it's another Band-Aid. You need to understand Band-Aids don't work. We're hemorrhaging. If you went into the hospital and your leg is half cut off and they start throwing Band-Aids on it, you think you're going to have your leg the next day? No. They have to do something very serious and stop the bleeding. Get the wound sealed in a way that it can heal. Remove any infection that's in it. That would be false ideas from the way we're talking. Okay? They'd clean out all the crap that's already got in there by the time you walked in the door. See, this stuff applies to everything. We just need to know it does apply to everything and how to apply it. And the more you listen to the way we're talking here, your thinking is going to get so clean and so clear. You're going to have so much clarity. You're going to love yourself for it. You know why? Because it's going to start giving you peace. Because peace and clarity come from understanding. When you don't know what the heck's going on, fear is going to eat you alive. And you know that's true. I know when this whole thing started, the first 30 days, the pandemic scare, I found myself looking at fear in a new way. Because what is going on? Is this really big? Is this going to really kill us? I mean, all those questions were there. We didn't know an answer to anything. That's scary. But we have answers now, but we act like we still don't. We'll get back to that too. Okay? And you'll just see some other really great things looking through the paradigm thing. And really, I can't suggest that you read that chapter enough, because it will really, really help you. Because it's really clear, it's really clean, and it will give you clarity. I'm not interested in selling the books. I'm interested in you getting the information. If your library's open, which we're having a problem with it here, even at the local level, I'd say go to the library and have them bring the book in for you. You still can do that. But, you know, it's going to be the type of thing you're going to want to read every night before you go to bed, because it's going to just help take your nightmares away. Because it's going to be something good for your mind to think upon that's based on truth. So, back to where we're talking about here. We want to keep coming back to this. Why? Because this will normalize and give us a foundation. Instead of running off half-cocked with 20 unbuilt buildings, we want to build one big building that will stay solid. And the building we're building is clear thinking in your mind. And clear thinking about what's going on with our society and what we are really in the middle of. What are we really in the middle of? Is it COVID? No, I don't think it is. And I think when we get done with this, you won't think it is either. You will see it as the breakdown of our paradigms happening all at once. Okay? Because the paradigms no longer serve us. So let's take a quick step back and say, okay, the original paradigm for the United States of America was our founding fathers said, we're leaving England, we're leaving the oppression, we're leaving all this stuff where we can't be free anymore, and we want more freedom, and we're willing to pay a very, very big price. And those pioneers, they paid a big price, right? So they came over and they diligently went through some very, very hard times. And when they got enough critical mass going that they were starting to form a society, they said, we need to govern ourselves, and what now is the smart way to do this? We know what we don't want. They came over with a bunch of what we don't want. We don't want the oppression. We don't want all these things that they brought over from England and its current paradigms. And so the Constitution became the first part of a paradigm shift for us. And it became what formed our government. And it became eventually something that loosely gave freedom to religions forming in a unique new way, and a new educational situation. And political, I don't know that started to come online. I'm not sure where that came online, but it started to come online and become, I think it was part of a breakdown already, showing us that our paradigms were breaking down. But we can talk about that at another time. And medical. And what was interesting, when the founding fathers were putting together the Constitution, did you know that Dr. Benjamin Rush was also one of those founding fathers? And it was slated that when they did the Bill of Rights, that they would include freedom of medical choice. At that time, allopathic medicine, which we now see as standard medicine, was coming up, and it was just birthing itself. And it was despised by all the other medicines that I'm going to call empirical medicines. And empirical medicine was always about, if it works, it works. That's valid. Okay, we didn't have science trying to prove why it worked or why it didn't work. We were really big on accepting things that worked and giving people freedom to do different methods, whether it was acupuncture, folk medicine, herbology, exercise, whatever. People were finding ways in which they wanted to heal themselves. It was all about healing and health and well-being. That's what medicine is really all about. So we have the idea of medical being about, what is your medicine? Okay? And our American Indians probably have one of the medicine. Can't talk and write at the same time. Hey, we share that, don't we? Okay. Medicine is basically, the American Indians had a beautiful way of looking at it. It was what you used to heal, whether you were healing your soul, your heart, a broken foot, a infection in your hand, whatever, okay? So medicine became that which healed. And I think it's a beautiful definition. Now we got an institution that says there's only one way to heal, and it's the way your insurance will pay for it. That was rather jaded, but we all kind of know it's really true.
Doesn't guarantee you anything.
And it doesn't guarantee you anything. And I'm not putting down all of standard medicine, because if I was in a car accident, I wanted them to be able to look at my any broken bone or anything. I didn't want to go to an herbologist or acupuncture for that. Okay? No. But everything has its place. Nothing is all or nothing. Everything together is a beautiful picture. So, one of the things that came out of this paradigm was our educational system eventually went from just being everybody's home. It started pretty much in a home, the community. All right, well, we're going and digging in the fields and getting all the food for the table and doing all this other stuff at a very most primitive level when we're founding, to make sure the kids can read and write and do whatever. And most of them were still having to do a great deal of their time with their parents out in the field, because everybody had to eat. So the biggest part of the paradigm started out as survival. Okay. That will never go away, because why?
Gotta exist.
Physical body. If it doesn't live, then what? What is COVID going on? That primal fear. You're going to die if you get it. Okay, that's scary. Who wants to, oh my God, if I get it, I die. Well, is that really true? We always have to ask, is that really true? Is that the way it really is? Well, we now know, yes, you will die if you have a weak immune system. If you have other underlying conditions that make you an unhealthy person, yes, you may die. You may not survive overcoming it because you're too weak. But if your immune system is strong, it turns out that they're now saying, turns out it's kind of like a puny virus. It's not really strong if you're strong. Well, that gives us something sane to think about, doesn't it? Oh, I divert again because it's such a big deal in front of us. So let me go back, and I apologize. So this paradigm, even in education, the education paradigm began to evolve. And it became something that served America becoming an industrial nation. So, what does an industrialized school education have to do? Make sure everybody can read, everybody can write.
You're a good factory worker.
And you're a good factory worker. Okay? Did you have to be a really creative thinker? Did you have to really be somebody who could critically think and reason and think on your feet really fast and debate and do all this other stuff. No. The average person didn't have to have those additional skills. So the educational system was very focused on getting people the type of education that would allow them to be good factory workers. You went on to higher ed to learn critical thinking, big critical thinking skills, and the other things I just mentioned. Does that paradigm fit today?
No.
No, it does not. We need to know critical thinking, and it needs to be woven into our educational system from kindergarten. Actually, preschool. Actually, toddler time. And yes, we can teach critical thinking in a way to a toddler that we can carry as we progress it to a kindergarten, to first grade, to fifth grade, to 10th grade, and on and on and on. But we don't have a system right now that collectively pulls that whole thing together for us. We need communication skills. We need all kinds of skills we did not need in an industrial nation. So our education has not kept pace, and that's why you hear people saying things like the dumbing down of America. We already know the education is failing. We've been trying the Band-Aid thing for over 30 years that I'm aware of, easy, 30, 40 years. And the Band-Aids, if they were going to work, would have worked by now. Instead, we are still complaining and saying something is still wrong. Now, why am I harping on the education part? Mainly because I'm an educator. And also because I know if you don't know and you're not learning something, if you're not really learning what you need to know, you're going to be screwed in the current world we live in. You can't live in an information age, which is what we've moved into, or out of the industrial age into an information age, and we haven't changed much any of our major institutions that serve us. The current paradigm also favors policy over principle. So it favors policy over principle. Now, how do we know that? Anybody got any ideas on that?
Well, a lot of times, parents, educators, people in charge don't know how to respond to an anomalous situation.
No, they don't. They don't know how to respond to an anomalous situation. And we don't, when I say the word principle, a lot of people hear it, but they're not 100% sure what that means. Okay? I say policy, and I think you know more, you may hate it. Okay? Policy. Ooh, yeah, policy. Corporations start their businesses and they write a policy book. Government, policy, policy, policy. And we know that policy sucks because it goes to the bottom, dumbs everything down to the lowest bottom line so it can work for the most amount of people, which means anybody who's not on that lowest common denominator place, which we now call the dumbing down zone, okay, they can't be served by the policy. They'll be screwed by the policy. And they're going to know they're screwed by the policy, okay? And the more you're at the dumbed down line and below it, policy looks good to you because you don't have to think, or you can't think beyond it. So this is a real problem right now. We are policy, our current paradigm has religion as policy driven. What would be a policy of religion, you might be saying? Well, one, blind faith. There's another one, a really big policy that most established religions have inculcated into all of our minds, and that is you must accept sinner status. Right? And what does sinner status mean? You're not worthy. Right? Not worthy. And not only are you not worthy implies you can't think for yourself. You're not allowed to get your own answers. Okay, so you're not worthy and you lack intelligence to know big answers. Okay? But we have to, that's lack. I'm sorry, not look. Lack. Okay? But you do need to look to your intelligence. All right. So what? Is that true? Is that really true? Are we really on blind faith the best way to think?
Well, absolutely not.
You said absolutely not. That sounded pretty conviction. strong with conviction. Why would you say that, Will, with an absolute and a not?
Well, because first off, we're not born sinners. That's a bunch of BS. And all this gets aligned in now political correctness. They're just telling you how to think, so you're not even considering how to think.
So let's take political correctness is the government and the political. Oh, we'll say it started here. Political correct, okay? Political correct. And what is that? That is the political version of blind faith.
Just
Think about it.
Conforming.
It's about conforming. Government wants us to conform now, right? And conform don't think too deeply and dumb down to the common denominator.
Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock boat. Okay, we don't have space. Don't
Okay.
rock boat. But you get the idea, everybody, right? It looks like don't rock the boot. Okay, don't rock the boat. But religion says conform, don't think, have blind faith. Dumb down, blind faith. Be a sinner. Know that you're bad. You're not worthy. Society built on these ideas is going to be a society of bravery or a society of fear.
Fear.
That's right. Fear. So, what's the bottom line paradigm? Fear for that. What's the bottom line for government? Is it also fear?
Externalization.
Yeah, externalizing the fear, right? And what do we want from the government? More than anything, we want protection and safety, right? And so government builds institutions for that, like
We
law and
want
order.
We want authentic leadership.
Well, we do want, but I'm talking about the paradigm,
Right?
the
Well, that's
institutions,
what we want.
and what they're not really providing. Even so, when these paradigms were started, we were still looking for that, weren't we? Of course, we always wanted authenticity. It started to break down. How can you have authenticity and blind faith at the same time? That paradigm broke down what we wanted. It's like I want something, but I better have things that support what I want, because it ain't going to happen. It's the idea of saying, I really want to teach my child how to be really centered, but I'm not centered. But I think I can teach him how to do it anyway. Well, we all know that's false, because we wake up and we'll say, I don't want to be like my parents. They said one thing and did another. Okay, we hate that. But then we go and do the same thing because we can't figure our way out of the same problem. We improve a little bit, but we didn't get to the base core that we had to get to. All right, so I wanted to just bring this up so that you can look at these kinds of things and think of them in terms of paradigm. Because our real thing that we're looking at, if we want to resolve this whole COVID mess, is we cannot just put Band-Aids over school. I'm already hearing horror stories about what's going to happen in the fall. Schools wanting to not have kids eat their lunch together. What? What do you mean? They got to sit in their own, with their sandwich or whatever, in their own little circle. What? You want to rearrange all the classrooms so that all the desks are 6 feet apart? Why? Why? Based on what? Fear. Because science is saying it doesn't spread that way. Well, if we now have facts and it doesn't go that way, why are we now implementing that as a policy into education? Duh. What do we have a problem with? Our paradigms in thinking. Because it was a don't think. Fear of change, fear. So let's go back a little bit more now. Okay, I think we can all, just wanted you to get an idea here that this has some reality. What we're going to talk about next, we'll come back to this. But wanted you to be able to say, Sharon, you're not just talking about a theory pulling shit out of your hat. Okay? Because I don't advocate blind faith. I want to teach you to think. I want you to use this intelligence because I recognize after my after-death experience, so I kind of saw the other side. Not kind of, I did. And I didn't just see it, I experienced it for a while. And it was very clear to me. Intelligence was our spirit nature. So if we are in intelligence, holy crap, religions have got it wrong at the most primal level when they say you can't think to get an answer. You don't have it. Oh no, how do we get it out of the darkness is a better question, not I don't have it. And if you're a sinner, you ain't going to ask those questions, because that is a very fearful paradigm. And it's really a paradigm that pushes you into being unworthy. And as long as you're unworthy, you're going to just not access your finer qualities. And you'll hear one psychologist after another. They're all talking about self-worth issues. All your self-help books are trying to talk about self-worth issues. They're talking about, but they don't know themselves how to resolve their own self-worth issues. Not in a way that isn't superficial. And therefore, you can read them and digest those books and affirm, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. What are you doing? You're beating your brain over the head with the idea that convincing yourself, I'm worthy. But a part of you keeps going, you'll have to do that every day. You have to whip me with the worthy chain. Because another part of me doesn't quite believe it. That's a real problem. We'll get into all that, but I just want you to see what we're talking about here is for you, and it does make sense for you. Yes, Will?
Well, in that respect,
I'm going to flip this while you do that.
Of, this paradigm we're talking about here in religion, which affects us all through our lives, if we believe it, is that the person has been shamed prior to even being born, which is just, okay, you're born into, you emerge into this existence which everybody's kind of confused by anyway. And now, you know, unbeknownst to you, and you're going to go to church with your parents on this, you've really been shamed into you're a sinner, son or daughter, you don't know this, well, we're telling you you are. So you're believing in a paradigm of belief, and it isn't necessarily your belief at all about anything. It's just somebody told you. So all these belief structures, which I'm assuming we're going to get into, are guiding you as a paradigm which came from your parents, which they got from somebody else too. So can you see how people could be confused?
What's a big word that keeps coming up? Is that true? Which means we're really talking about truth, right?
Or is it a belief?
Well, before we go that far, Will, but first off, we're asking, is it true or is it false? Is that correct or is it incorrect? That's the first thing we're really trying to get some clarity on here, right? We heard the word come up. Well, we understand now that we have paradigms, and paradigms are about thinking. Thoughts gathered together to form a cohesive unit that we depend upon, that tell us how we're going to think and how we're going to protect ourselves and do all the stuff we want. Okay. There's something that is very, very useful for everybody to look at. And I know a lot of people have seen this little thing, the yin yang. And it comes under many names. The Tao is the word I like to use. The eternal Tao. But it can be called yin yang. It can be called polarity. It can be called duality. It all is saying and talking about the same exact thing. Okay. So, we have at the most bottom line, you can't reduce it anymore if you tried. Does everybody know what a prime fraction is? You can have 1/2. You can have 2/4, right? You can have 100 over 200. The idea is we can go on and on and on and come up with an infinite numbers of ways to put into fractions mixed with a bunch of other fractions and have our mind go, okay, I'm overwhelmed. Don't make my head go there. That's too big. But if we do what's called reducing a fraction, where it can be the lowest common denominator of that fraction, we would see that these ones that I did here, no matter what you do, will all come down to 1/2. We can throw those in with a million fractions, and some will reduce down to 1/3. Some will reduce to 1/2. Some will reduce to 1/4. Those would be called the prime fractions. When you get something down to its prime fraction, it's not so confusing. There's a much more limited number of those prime fractions that we could put out than the bajillion other versions of each of those that would just look like a sea of numbers that are overwhelming. And please don't make my brain go there, unless you are a lover of math. You aren't even going to want to look at it. It'll just make it go into fraction paralysis or paradigm paralysis. Definitely thinking paralysis. Okay, and overwhelm puts us into paralysis. Okay, but at the very, very basic bottom line, we have the absolute and its opposite would be what? Relative. Okay. Absolute can also be called eternal. It never changes. It's always, always. And here we would have finite, right? Finite says it has a beginning and an end.
Always changes.
And it's always changing. Okay? So in what would be another absolute teaching that we all kind of admire and we struggle with it to this day is it came up with the teaching and said, love your neighbor. So people are always thinking, what's the opposite of love? And here we get people, when they really think about it, first, the knee jerk is what? Hate. But if we really think about it, love would have to be the opposite or the absence of love. The actual true opposite of love is fear. Now, because hate is such a big thought here, when we cannot love, you're unworthy, you're told you're not an essence of love, which you are, then you're basically have fear that I'm not love. Okay? I'm not worthy. And what is that energy? It's resentment. My value and worth has been taken from me. So if I call you a name other than your name, William, and I start calling you jerk or something, what am I doing? I'm attacking your love essence, and I'm basically demeaning you to a label, in this case a negative label, and you feel a little bit of resentment in your heart that I've just attacked your value and worth. So that's correct. I did. And resentment makes you, if it grows and resentment goes to its extreme, that goes to hate. And hate then wants to try to get itself the worth back. And then we see movie after movie after movie. So we know this is what our paradigms have gotten us into. Revenge. Getting even. That's a revenge way trying to come back to love. But is getting even got anything to do with love? No. It's fear trying to undo the value and worth thing and trying to rob it and take it back by hurting you back. Okay? Our paradigms are messed up. And right now they're exploding in our face. But let's get to this first for a minute. Sorry, I keep jumping ahead. Okay, so love and fear. We want to look at this because these are very important words. We'll come to them again and again and again. Because if you can get any idea down to its prime fraction, in this case, it's reduced juxtaposition. It's opposites attracting. Okay? Because we're smart enough now and we're big enough, we can talk about everything has a resonance. Okay? Energy has a resonance, and we'll say, oh, I vibe with that. Ooh, do you vibe with that? Do you have harmony or disharmony with that? That's a vibration term. Things harmonizing, aligning, getting in sync. These are resonance factors in words. And we're smart enough to say the word energy. 100 years ago, not so much. You could have been talking about it and would have been like, what? We couldn't relate to that. So energy has a fear, love has a, fear has an energy, love has an energy. And they have a resonance and they attract. Energy attracts or repels. That's another aspect of this bottom line. Attract, and repel. Okay? We have this here because this is clarity. If you can get to this kind of thinking, you will have clarity. Get to the bottom line. So let's look at some other words that allow us to translate for our conversation this yin yang, this Tao. We call this the master key. When you get it down to its primal part, from what's eternal and absolute to relative and finite, you have the master key of the universe for thinking. Now, talk about that a great deal and almost keep going back to it over and over and over again in Preface to Your Eternity. Well, isn't that interesting? Want to get back to your eternity, where the absolutes of who you are will clarify living in this crazy world of turmoil. There is no chaos in love, but there is chaos in fear. I don't think we have to belabor that point. I think you kind of know that when you heard it. Okay, so if we have, what's some other words for this clarity? How about bottom line? Lots of businesses and stuff want to talk, let's get to the bottom line. Profit loss. What else? What is the real problem that's causing us to have more loss and not the profits? Okay, we're always talking bottom line. Talk about schools. Right now, what's the bottom line? You're dumbing down. You're not educating up. That's a problem. All right, when the bottom line is messed up and we can see, then we know, can I fix this education system? You get to the bottom line, you'd say, no, it's a wrong paradigm. It's based for an industrial age. It wasn't built upon an information age. It doesn't have all the pieces that we need. So we got to come up with a new system. Bottom line makes that clear. Okay, we'll talk about, I'll do something else here that'll help you. What's another idea for bottom line? We can have root, get to the root, and we could say seed. Okay? Now let's just, well, you're going to love my drawings. Maybe not. Okay. Oh, and this tree has fruit on it. Little cherries or something. Okay. So what we have is the bottom line could also be considered ground, couldn't it? We have roots. We have seed. And then we have growth, whatever this was. It could be a tree, could be grass, it could be whatever. Correct? Okay. When we are talking about, and the way our current paradigms have us thinking and keep us highly, highly in a state of confusion, is we are constantly talking about all the branches or the fruit on the tree. And we can hack away at this, and this is like having all the different versions of one half. And we could just go and hack and hack and hack and cut and whatever and be working on that for one hell of a long time. However, we always say, lay your axe to the root. We know this, but we don't do it. We don't understand how to get there. We don't understand its real value because we think of it just as a floating concept. I'm helping you look at how to stop floating and anchor it. You've got to stop it floating and anchor it, and you can come back to this over and over and over, and you can take any problem and use these ideas, these pictures, and put your idea on here and start getting clarity. Isn't that what you want? I mean, it's just, you don't have to do it, but I'm helping you do it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening here saying, I'm going to do it. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are listening saying, maybe I'll do it sometimes, but I'm not committed to clarity. I'm not committed to my peace and well-being. I'm really looking for a Band-Aid yet. So I would suggest you really read at least that chapter in Tango to realize, do you really want just a Band-Aid, or are you sick of Band-Aids? I think this is exploding, and the good thing that can come out of all this crap that's going on right now is we can at least start to say, what have we been doing wrong? All right, I'm sick of the Band-Aids. I am sick of not seeing things cohesively pulled together anymore. Yes, Will?
Can I say one thing here?
Sure.
We add on the other side there, the relative side.
Mm-hmm.
We have resonance of energy or harmony.
Mm-hmm.
The other side, you could put separation there.
Well, this is a very key word that should be here too. We should have oneness here and separation here. And I'm glad you brought that up, Will, because that is one of the bottom lines. We will see that there's several more, but this is a key one. Actually, this is a very big key one. Okay? Our old paradigms are built on separation. Our institutions aren't working together, are they? That would have been another one. Finances. Oh, why didn't I put banks in mine? That needs to go. We should put that on before we even forget, because that was a big one. How about it? We'll put over here. What do we want to put? Banks, money. What do you want over here?
I put finance at this point. Well, it's not even finance. Yeah.
Economy.
Economy. Yeah.
Economy. Okay, because then that would be, we'll go into money, businesses, and then that will have things that branch out of them. Okay, that's excellent. Woo! That was a good one. Okay, so it was an important one. Okay, so bottom line, root, seed, oneness, separation. This new paradigm, and if you'll think about it, oneness is a hand in glove with love. Separation goes hand in glove with fear. Whoa, that's heavy and cool, isn't it? Very, very, very important. You'll come back to this and realize the wisdom that can be yours by getting this clarity. It's powerful. This is really kick-ass stuff. This is going to give you what education has failed to give you. Our current education system is incomplete. We already hinted at that, but it's incomplete. And we talked earlier, which was a very good idea too. Let's just say the three major things that we're missing in education that we talked about earlier. It's incomplete, right? Which means you don't got all the pieces that you need. What else is it?
Well, it's paradigm paralysis, period.
Well, it's incomplete, and it's got a lot of
Gaps.
well, incomplete would be the gaps, for sure.
Misinformation.
It's got it's not really it gives a lot of misinformation, so it's not it's deceitful. It does have these horrible qualities.
Misleading.
Let's say it's
What's founded in the past.
it's not evolving. All right.
Inadequate.
It's inadequate. It's inadequate. It's not evolving. Which means it's not continuing, right? It's in a box. It's not continue. It's contractive. It contracts, right? To a box,
Paralysis.
which is also paralysis. That lowest common denominator, okay? The lowest common denominator, which is dumbing. Dumbing. Okay. Well, to get and it's actually, he brought up 3 different words about deceit and stuff. So let's just say, it is deceitful. It has become deceitful, hasn't it? If they're going to change a history book, I can't even think of a better way to define that other than deceitful. I mean, it is dumbing down and contracting, but it's also become deceitful. All right. So is this okay with you? No. And there's a book that that is about to hit this week. We hope. I wrote it and was hoping it would have been out last month, but technical things, what they are, we had to make sure the cover and everything got done for what it was. And I really was not going to put the book out for years. But with the COVID thing, I just realized families were exploding before my face, and I couldn't take all the pain and suffering people were having with their children. And so the book is called The Heart and Soul of Parenting, Step-by-Step Skills that Empower Both Parent and Child. It is a handbook for you. It's not a theory. You're going to get step-by-steps you can follow. Then you can come to the Antakarana, AKRNA website.com, AKRNA.com, and get to the contact page and say, Sharon, we want a webinar. We got questions. We want to talk about something specific that happened, and we're trying to plug in these steps. And, well, one, we want to brag that they worked, and on others, I got something that I'm not quite sure. Did you mean this or did you mean that? Here's what my child's doing. I say, okay, let's talk about it. Okay? It's all here for you to help with the paradigm changes. And in there we talk a lot about how parents have been left with an incomplete education. We all graduate. I'm just got to say this because it goes to the crazy, deceitful incompleteness of our education. In the world we live in, if our paradigms were really what they need to be, really up and beat with us, would we gut all the way through high school and not have had one class on what parenting involves and good parenting skills? Whether you're going to have children or not. Which shouldn't. We're all going to become adults. We don't know if we're going to become a parent or not. Most of us will. Do we want to keep practicing on the firstborn and make all those mistakes? I mean, we say it as a joke, but it's like a hollow joke that nobody's really thinking is funny. But you feel bad. My God, I had a child. I'm staring in the eyes of this newborn baby, and oh my God, holy shit, I'm not prepared. I don't know what to do. In an information age, society, with the information we have, should you really be in that position? No. That says really big gaping holes in our education system. You should know child development. You should know certain things that you would do that could enhance your child's growth or delay their growth. Help create a child that becomes a gang member, which would be all the things that would go on your do not list. Do not do list. But you need to know what to do and what not to do. And you need to know why you do what you do and not do. Otherwise, that's blind faith. Screw the blind faith crap, okay? You're bigger and better, and we all need more. And this is trying to help get the ball rolling here in the right direction. And I know a lot of people are out there, you're just looking for us. And I hope everybody who's listening, you share this with as many people as possible and say, let's watch these things, man, because we're getting some free education. And education that a lot of people want to charge thousands of dollars for, that when you come out of it, still missed all the major points. They're selling the hype and the idea of this, but not the reality of it, okay? I want you to get the reality of it. That brightened my day. Brighten everybody's day here. That's why we're doing this, okay? So, education is incomplete. It's inadequate, not evolving. It contracts us into box thinking, and it's deceitful. And this is one of the reasons we're not prepared to deal with our current breakdown of our society. All those institutions are exploding because the paradigm died a long time ago, and we did not let them go and change. A little bit we could equate this with the idea that when Tesla came up with free energy, he envisioned that we would be here today where everybody would not need to have electrics, wires running up to their homes, and Wi-Fi everywhere, because we would have been able to get electricity from the air for almost nothing. That would have kept our society free to do some of the other things we would want to do. But we're so busy trying to maintain profits and corporations that just don't want to shift and change with the times because they want to keep what they got, their status quo. And that status quo is basically blind faith and lack of growth. It's wanting to hang on to something finite and make it last forever. But just looking at this here, finite is already doomed to never be eternal. It has to evolve. Isn't that helpful? I think it's helpful. When there's just meditate on these things and you say, oh my God, I mean, it's so consistent. It goes together. It makes so much more sense. Sure, you're not going to solve everything. I mean, you just don't go and build a 2,000 piece jigsaw puzzle in a 1 hour setting. But we're going for that big puzzle. And right now I'm laying some of the things with a good big jigsaw puzzle. You're going to start by building in the frame. And every once in a while you'll see some pieces and you're just going to put little spots along the side. And we're doing a little bit of that as we go. Because that's how jigsaw puzzles are often built. Okay? So, the bottom line, the root, the seed. So let's look at truth. Truth alone with this idea. Okay? Because this would be very, 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 very important in your ability to look at this COVID thing. Because you got to look at the information coming at you so you can figure out what are we going to do about education and why. What are we going to do about the government and why. What are we going to do about the banks and their economy, people not having jobs. We need some answers. We got to get out of theory land. We got to get out of fantasy land. This is not a fantasy anymore. This is our realities falling apart in front of us. People are dying from suicide, and that breaks my heart. There are mental health off the charts. Clearly, our response is not correct, or we wouldn't be having mental health issues that go off the charts in 90 days. Come on, do we really need to belabor these points? You know that. You don't want to talk about it maybe because there are no answers. We're here to get answers. We're here to help you get answers and to know why you got those answers and get us all on a thinking track that gets us back in resonance with love, the absolute, the eternal, that which is attracting the good, because this is all good. This would be bad. Good, bad. I mean, it's raw, total opposition at the most primal part. Okay. Oneness or separation. We cannot go into the information age, and I think we all know it because we're all now starting to talk about one world and whatever. We know we got to go into oneness, but you can't go into oneness with separation paradigms. Because separation paradigms, I'm going to put one more on here. So important. We are a spirit. Okay? That has eternal. That's what goes out when I had my after-death experience. Whoops! I'm still here. Oops! I'm an intelligence. Nobody told me that. How did my religion forget that? How did my whole high school education forget that, right? Okay? Spirit and ego mind. Okay? We got mind, which is, and we could call this life. And we could call this, I'm going to call it Tossle. Just for the ease, because it's easier to write. The true other side of life is eternal. There's more to talk about on this. But when you die, you're going to go in one of two places. You're going to keep doing what is part of life, and you're on an earth cycle with a body, and you're going to keep recycling in and out, and people talk about it as reincarnation, and people having all these past life regressions and life experiences. So we know that there's something there, even if our religion doesn't want to acknowledge it for us, right? The director's always telling me, get in the right place with the camera. Be kind to the listeners. Okay. So we have the true other side of life, turns out, is our infinite spirit. And it's beautiful because our infinite spirit is intelligence, pure consciousness, pure, absolute means pure, absolute pure consciousness. And our nature is love. We're eternal. And we attract that which resonates with that goodness, that beauty of who we are. It's a wonderful thing. And I realized, oh my God, my religion really got me on the wrong track with all this sinning stuff. Because, man, I was born in original sin, according to my religion. And I'm telling you, just don't shake that kind of unworthiness by just saying, oh, that's not true. Turns out just saying that's not true was not enough to heal the wounds of my feeling unworthy and like a sniveling piece of shit on this planet. Okay? That after death experience, I got to see it, but shortly after I get back into my body, within a year, my ego mind was already chewing away at that truth. Awful. Horrible. And all the self-worth stuff was just churning around underside. That's a whole other story and stuff to talk about. But I've healed that. And so I'm coming from a place that was where we all know and understand, and I see everybody in that in turbulated waters of all that unworthiness and everybody feeding into a fear. And as long as they're feeding into fear, they're not feeding into our love. That is a fact. Okay? An ego mind does not know or understand what spirit is. And just to help you all out, spirit can be kind of goofy. It can be disincarnated. Ooh, oh, they're haunting the place. Spirits. Okay? And there's a whole understanding of that, but this is not the place for it. That's one of those other parts of the puzzle we can get to way down the road. Way down there, Will said. But we're a Christos spirit. And I'm going to use that phrase to differentiate our pure love essence, which is who we really, really are, buried under all the fear and teachings of the ego mind. Is there anything we need? Our people are wanting to know anything?
Yeah, you have some comments from Vicky.
Vicky's got some comments.
Yeah, I think maybe the last three pretty close to what you were saying.
Oh,
Do you want me to read them?
sure. Yeah, if you were to read them, we'd want you to be closer to the mic because I know.
See them on your screen.
Let's see. Unworthiness can also be in our DNA. So you have to heal more than the surface of what you think you know. Clearly. Right on. But you also change your inner self. And Vicky, what we're talking about here is when I'm saying the ego mind, and I said you would be recycling because you're going to be, if you're talking DNA, you're talking body. Okay? And the body, the spirit, does not have a DNA. Okay? Or an RNA per se. It's pure formlessness. It's consciousnness. And consciousness does need a mind to be able to get into a body. That's just, it's like Russian dolls, Russian nesting dolls. Spirit needs to come into this physical manifesting place called Earth, and it will have DNA to pick up for the body. And right, all the fear and the horrible things that have been happening in the whole history of mankind are stored in those RNA DNA factors. And yes, we do have to heal those, because those are still resonating with fear and all the abuses that man has been doing to man for a long time. Okay? And it is part of who we are. That's because we're oneness. Like it or not, we're oneness. Even though we're coming from the sense of separateness, it's because our paradigms have not evolved to catch up to our intelligence and what we can understand today, and we have to know for the information age. Have to know. Nonetheless, DNA and the body and everything else is still an energy field. We're a unified energy field. And there are ways to heal that unified energy field. So we can heal from the top down, from our presence, our Christos spirit, and we can heal from the body and our RNA and DNA factors up. That's the best of both worlds. The Tao. We're putting the two together. This will always be the best lead because it's absolute and pure. Relative is kind of funny. So let's look at the funkiness of relative. And I'm not going to do what I do on my notes where I try to write in that little teeny tiny corner. Okay, so we've got absolute, let's just say truth. Okay, so when somebody says, that's truth. What's the truth? Well, you have to say, if you're really thinking with your thinking cap fully in prime fraction thinking, you'd have to say, is it absolute truth that we're talking about, which is pure? Okay? Or are we talking relative truth? Or is it relative? And relative, the big word for relative is it depends. Is something true or not true depends on all these interesting factors. What's going on? What's happening? What's not happening? So let's just look at absolute truth will never let us down. Relative truth is in constant flux. Absolute is stable. And it's in harmony. This is in flux would be, it's chaos always trying to find harmony. Okay? Right now we got chaos off the rails because our paradigms and our institutions aren't there to support us because they're breaking down, because probably everything is now here to just say you haven't fixed it when you could. You didn't fix it when you could. Now the hemorrhage is just all over the place. You now got to grow up and figure out we got to rebuild and let's do some new things from scratch. Trying to fix what was there is so broken. You're wasting a lot of time and energy, and that could be the good that comes out of all this insanity. Okay? God, let's hope we can bring some good out of it, okay? Because this conversation a lot of people wouldn't have cared about even 4 months ago. But now you got bigger questions and you're saying, okay, everything's broken and falling apart. Maybe it would be very helpful to look at something I did not want to take the time or was afraid to look at. Because right now I'm living in absolute fear. So what would take me out of fear? Okay? Clarity will take you out of fear. Okay, so pure or depends. Okay, so relative is duality, right? And this is oneness. We also have separation, because if we're saying oneness is really 1 times 1 equals 1. Separation likes to go and put it this way, and now we think we've got another action going on. But this is a lower level of understanding. We know that because when we teach children in school, we start with addition before we get to multiplication. Okay? They need to understand this idea because it's in front of them, and then they can get to this idea, and they can really do a lot with it. Okay? So, we have, let's say, 100. We have 0. We could say we have absolute positive and absolute negative. Let's just keep it simple. Okay? How does the absolute relate? We use an absolute quality. So, love would balance the gaps. Okay? A lot of people would call this, we come to the center. Okay? People like to call the center the heart. Okay? And isn't it interesting, a heart has 2 lobes. But it's one heart. So, depends swings like this in a small area where it's balancing a little of this, a little of that. Well, it depends whether it leans a little more to this side or it leans a little more to that to get to our resolution or our answer. Depends sticks in this little circle area, very close to the center point. The more we come into harmony, the more this circle gets smaller and smaller. The more confused our world, the bigger this is initially, but we're going to be healing it and bringing it in this way. Does that make sense? So, see how much separation there is here? Less separation, less separation, less separation. So when we get to that balance point, they're in relative, we'll only have a little bit of separation. Because we're not going to get to the point where we're like, oh, I can't tell if I'm Sharon or Will. I can't tell if I'm I can't tell anything. Okay, the body itself requires it. So in this world, the oneness is ideally seen as a unity of oneness. Okay? And that's a beautiful thought. What's the name of our country? The United States of America, one country, with a unity of states. What would be the unity of oneness? Oh, and I asked a good question. If we go back to the idea of us being a spirit, it all starts with us being, everything starts with us on the true other side of life, which is our consciousness and our Christo spirit. We can also call that God, creator side, right? And we all want to go there, and we call that home. Some people call it heaven. But they want to go back to heaven when they die because they want to, their heart is actually yearning for that oneness of home again. Okay? So, I find people really have found this is great. Oh, you're going to love my art. Not. There's a diamond. Do you love my diamond? Okay. This is the creator. Okay? And the creator is one. And the creator is envisioning itself as facets. Every facet on that diamond is a person in embodiment. Oh my God. The creator is phenomenal. How many people are on the planet right now? I don't know.
7.5 billion.
Billions. Wow. So, that many people are taking embodiment as an expression of the one creator. That must be one heck of an intelligence, don't you think? I mean, that's like awesome. We can't even comprehend that. But we can comprehend the idea of that. And we can get a sense that somehow that lights our fire up so much better than, you unworthy piece of shit, you. You are a facet of the divine. That's why great teachers were saying, love your neighbor as yourself. Because you're all a facet of the same diamond. It's insane to be attacking another facet. Well, we can't come out of doing all the attacking till we start looking at, do we want to leave the paradigms that are currently guiding us? We have to make that decision first. Because it's going to take some work, and it's a little scary to go into a new paradigm. But if you can look at the new paradigm and say, I love where this new paradigm is going, and it makes sense, I'm willing to heal. Remember, the other part I put, you're going to heal your thinking. To heal your thinking is to get back to the truth, where you're working from absolutes rather than negatives. So let's just go back to an institution right now. Let's just look at COVID before we end the show today, just because it's on everybody's mind. And I would feel remiss to just drop it here without pulling it back to the insanity of life. Okay, so let's just look at COVID for a minute. I even hate writing this word, because what I really want to call it is carnivorous. Okay? So what is this basically? What's true and what's not true? There's lots of stuff that everybody's calling truths. But what are the relative truths and what is the absolute truth going on here? And how do we look at that? Well, that's a big question. The way to look at it would be to say, relative started out with thinking about what it might be. Okay, we had a bunch of scientists sitting around going, oh my God, look what's happening in China. And and they made projections of what we call worst case scenarios. Now, you tell me, does that sound like a love idea or does that sound like a fear idea?
Well, it sounds like a fear idea. It's also CDC models.
All right, the CDC models were projections and they were based on fear of the worst case scenario.
Basically, they're based on ignorance.
Well, yeah, and that would be the gap of a knowledge and awareness. And they had to work with projections because we didn't have knowledge or awareness yet.
Based on ignorance? No.
Right. The projections were based on what we don't know or ignorance, or we could call it a lack of facts. Right? Which, here comes the big words, a void, a gap, a of separation. A separation from what is and what we think could be. And this was very, very important. Okay? Absolute, living in our world, would be more like, what is the actual data telling us now? What is the honesty of the data? How clean is it? How clean is it?
Actual truth.
And factual, okay? Okay, so what we've got is the data, which would be facts and honesty. I forget the name of the doctor that I was listening to because he was really very sane and was very helpful. Okay?
Buddha.
No, yeah, Buddha, but the other one that Attar or Steve something. Anyhow, we can get it for you. A very, very good link. And he was basically being interviewed in one of the most sane interviews I've ever seen. And he was actually saying, we now have facts. And what we'd like to do is get the CDC to stop working on projections that they keep filling in with new facts, but they keep staying stuck on the projections. So let's think about scientists for a minute and what they're doing. He said scientists aren't policymakers, which is what our institutions are built on. They only think inside of their lab. Okay, and so they're basically having projection masturbation, in my opinion. They're sitting there, projection. Oh, here's a little bit of information. Oh, still going to worst case scenario with bits and pieces. They didn't stop the projections completely and say, let's redraw models based on 3 months of data, 3 months of fact, and cleaned up facts, not facts that were hyped up or inflated so people could get some money for the hospital that was running out of money. They're getting paid all this money if they would actually say it was a COVID death. You know, all this bullshit. Okay? There was a lot of stuff went on that people are doing to try to survive. Okay? Let's not try to put malfeasance on everything. Let's just say people were making knee-jerk decisions trying to survive. Okay? Keep the doors open or whatever as the economy and everything just stopped. Okay? And if somebody gave them a way to do it, can you really say, well, I would have rather they didn't. I wish they would have had a higher level of integrity to not do it. Absolutely. But there were other doctors who were watching and they came forward and said, I don't feel good about this. I'm seeing this going on and I'm being asked to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. But the facts started coming out. Okay? We got 3 months now of data. And if we look at the data, cleaned up out of opinions, cleaned up out of agendas, and just bare naked facts, we can handle a little nakedness here. It would be helpful. We begin to see that we know what we didn't know 3 months ago. Okay? So we want models, and we want guidance, and we want our leadership to start accessing facts that are based on data, not projections that are based on fear, and scientists who are sitting completely in their little lab doing what they do and just projecting and projecting and projecting. But that shouldn't be what we're following as leadership advice, because they're in their box masturbating over projections. It's scientific indulgence. But in a lab, it's okay to be scientifically indulgent. It is not okay to take scientific indulgence and dump it into the mass population and change policy and leadership over it. We already see that this is a disaster. And we already see that people living from fear is not nice. It's not beautiful. And it's not exciting. It breaks my heart to see all this fear in people's eyes. So, we have relative and absolute. We want to get to the absolute, and we want to demand that our schools respond to this more absolute side and say, hey, you don't have the right to be coming off a projection and something that is being proven 3 months later down the road to not be correct. You do not have the right to force my child to have to eat his lunch all by himself, or to be so stupid that you cannot understand data. Because if you're that stupid, what the hell am I sending my kid to school to learn from you for? That's a legitimate question, parents. I mean, really. I know they're in your hair and they're driving you nuts. I get it. And that's why I wrote the handbook for parents, The Heart and Soul of Parenting. Because it's non-judgmental and it helps you really get the raw facts. You need them. You need it. You deserve it. And you should have had this a long time ago. Really, a long time ago. It should be part of what we're doing in our educational systems. But they're not going to be part of the Band-Aids. Okay, so plenty to think about today. I hope it's not overwhelmed. I hope you've found it all useful. But talk to me. I'm open for us to do live question and answer webinars. Because this has got to be where we solve the problems. I don't think it's going to be solved at the level of our institutions. They're too invested. They are going to cling until the grassroots movements come up and say, we're running a parallel world here. Screw you. You either get your act together and move with some better paradigms that we want to be living from, or you're just going to break down under the weight of ignorance, the weight of what no longer works, and the weight of being drowning in your own hemorrhaging blood. Okay? You're no longer serving the greater good of humanity when you're feeding a fear-based situation or you're dumbing everything down. And you're breaking the economy so people can't pay the rent, can't eat their food, and they start doing fear-based things and they will hurt another human being just to feed their family. What? That's where we're going. But we don't have to go there. This will stop us from going if we keep pursuing and understand this. And it will give you a good foundation to get with other people, and we can start building a parallel society if we have to. I'm not into fighting anymore. I'm into let's just get the job done. Let's just do what we need to do. Let's get on our feet and say, I am smart enough. I need clarity. Let me get some good clarity here. And let's start having clarity conversations that are all on the bottom line. We can do it. I know we can do it. Well, it might be a little sloppy to start, but it's better than staying with the lies, the deceit, and the ignorance. We'll figure it out. But we ain't going to figure it out sitting there at home with a mask on our face, being afraid of everybody. It ain't going to happen with our kids 6 feet apart, learning how to not be relatable human beings. Right? Alrighty. Would someone here like to bring the show to a pleasant end for our listeners? Oh, thank you. Now you get to listen to the calm, soothing voice of Tryson.
Tryson Graham here to roll the outro. This has been Edge of Truth Radio. How to gain clarity in the midst of chaos. Your host, Sharon Quinn, Will Gable, and I'm Tryson Graham. Sharon is the author of Preface to Your Eternity, The Big If in Life, and Tango with the Divine, and
Heart and Soul.
Her book to be newly released, Heart and Soul of Parenting Handbook. Check it out. Thanks for joining us, and have a good week.
And get in touch so we can really make this personal for you.
Yeah.
That's our hope, our joy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you for
being with
listening.
us.
And thank you for putting up with our